Welcome back to Anxious to Align, Tuning the Soul. I am your host, Holly Ann, and today we're taking a different kind of journey. One that's personal, spiritual, and what I believe foundational to healing. So we're not just going to talk about anxiety today, but we're going to be talking about the soul, about who we are, why we're here, and what happens when we forget our divine essence. So this episode is about my journey to growing up in a certain idea of God and eventually finding my way back to truth. I had one that I've known all along. So get a cozy space, open your heart, and let's go inward together. So my early years, I was raised Catholic. My mom was Catholic and my dad was Protestant. Fun, right? And so, like many people who grew up this way or traditional religious settings, we were taught that God was a man, an external authoritative figure. You know, somewhere he sat in the sky on a cloud somewhere, right? He watched you, he judged you, he rewarded the good and punished the bad. And yet, he was not in you. You had to earn your way back to him. You had to go to confessions to release or be forgiven for your sins. So that version of God left me feeling very disconnected. And even though I went through the motions, something didn't sit right with me. Deep down inside, in my soul, I never fully believed it. And so even in high school, I had what I've known as like a voice of reason. And I know I mentioned this before, but like I've always had a knowing. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle. It was like a quiet little voice that was there, but it was persistent. And it usually always whispered, "This isn't the whole story. This can't be all there is." But then it were also times it was like, you are meant for something more. There's still more to do. You know, I was bullied. I was put down. I was the quiet kid that sat in the back of the classroom. And so it wasn't fun. And there's a little more that goes along to it that we can get to later on, but I did not have a great high school experience. You know, I being bullied and stuff like that, I totally get. I was there, I lived it. But I never had the thought of committing suicide, but there was always that voice in my head that I can't say it talked me out of it because that thought was never fully there because of this. How to explain it at the time. But that voice never left me. It stayed quietly in the background until I was really ready to listen to it on a more fully, like resonating level. And so now to look back and realize that even in the confusion, even in the disconnect, I was being led. Because the soul does always remember, even if we forget. And, you know, fast forwarding to now and doing the work that I've done and going through everything and reading the books and learning things and watching the videos, it wasn't until like my friend John, who has always suggested books, and then finally he suggested this one, Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch, and it was like the light turned on. It felt like divine timing. Even though I was a little upset that I didn't find these sooner, but that's okay. But it was like everything that I had ever questioned, every inner whisper I had ignored, was waiting in that book to arrive. And it's not like I've ever thought it was a lie for inner whispers. I knew they meant something, but I just was never sure what. And when I began reading, it was like everything clicked into a place, like a puzzle that was like laid out together or overlapping, and then everything fell into place. And so these weren't just words on a page, they were truths I had carried all along, but never had the language for it. And like I said, I wish I'd found it sooner. When I went to his website, and he has a whole portal for this stuff for his books, and because he went so much more, and come to realize there was a lot of other people that I followed that spoke on his portal. And so I was like, why? I followed these people for so long. I could go list them out, but it would be long, like Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden. Greg Braden is big on his page, I believe. But once I saw his picture there, I was like, wow, I'm like, I follow these people. Why have I never heard this before? But again, everything does have divine timing. I wasn't obviously ready for something then. So I do the book challenged me. Everything I had been taught about God, because it wasn't that I've never believed him or source. I know I keep saying him, and I'm like, it's not him. But it just challenged everything, and it just now there was a knowing that instead of judging, if God, it spoke of God who is within, and it made so much more sense that how would we not be God? And I don't say that as like, oh, I'm God. It's he created this whole thing, the universe, and I don't mean to say he as in someone, but it's he is an energy, he is a source. And it makes so much more sense that he is within us all. And he is within everything on this planet and this planet. He's almost like the observer. And he's watching this reality that he has created out in front of him through us. And a lot of the things just have landed so well within this book. And it just literally was like, that's it. That's it. That's it. It just all came together. And even though I heard this saying so many times that we are not a human, we're not a human being trying to have a spiritual experience. We are a spiritual being having a human experience. And no matter how many times I've heard it, it just seemed to sit with me now, even more deeper than it has before. And everything made sense. My struggles made more sense. Even my anxiety made more sense. This book didn't tell me what to believe. It gave me permission to believe what I've already known. It confirmed that voice I had been hearing since high school. It was truthful. It wasn't rebellious. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. I felt seen by my own soul. And one of the most powerful teachings I took from conversations with God is we are here to remember who we are. We are not here to be tested. We are not here to be punished or to prove ourselves. We are not broken. We are not born in sin. We are divine beings who choose this life experience in order to grow, evolve, and remember our truth through contrast. And that contrast, it's not a mistake. The pain, the fear, the forgetting, it's all part of this dance. When we forget, we get the opportunity to remember. And when we remember, we deepen our compassion, our power, our connection, not just to ourselves, but to each other and to Source. The soul doesn't grow through ease alone. It grows through choice, through experience, through conscious remembrance. It's almost like what was I gonna say? Like you can always tell someone something. You can always, I want to say do something, but it's like people don't remember things, that you maybe say to them, but they will always remember how you make them feel. And so it's like your soul has to go through physical, mental, whatever experiences to be woken up because it's going to know how you feel, if that makes sense. So you came here not to suffer, but to wake up, not to follow the rules, but to reclaim your truth. And I get it at this point, some people automatically choose, oh, I choose this life. And you think that, how can someone choose something so unbearable to happen to them? But we don't, maybe that soul knew what they needed to happen in order to remember, or someone that soul knows how stubborn they are, or maybe how stubborn someone else. Sometimes we choose things to happen, so they happen to someone else because maybe they're stubborn or something. But I'm probably going way too much off on a tangent, but it's, I know sometimes we say this and we start to judge other people and what they have chosen, and adding our belief into what someone else does or has decided to do or anything like that. And you know, it's maybe that's for another episode, but think of your life and what you're doing and what you have chosen to kind of do and your decisions that you've made throughout life, and pay attention to that. And have have you ever felt that maybe your life is trying to shake you awake, and maybe it's nudging you to remember who you really are? Think of things that way when now you look back at what you've gone through and your process of it. We can't believe or think for someone else or understand someone else's reasoning, but we can understand our own. You know, I I I discovered my grandmother's breast cancer. It's and that's something that was hard, that sat with me, and it's like, why did I have to discover that? Um so but then you think about it. Look what that has done for me in my process of awakening. I've definitely chosen a lot of different paths to go down, as opposed to maybe if I didn't, maybe I would end up with something. Who knows? But, anyways, to kind of move on. Now, this kind of brings us to, what does this really have to do with anxiety? I think everything. Because, in my experience, both personal and professional, anxiety is often what happens when we forget who we are, when we've become disconnected from our soul, when we've absorbed the world's fear and forgotten our inner truth. We start to believe we're not safe. We start to believe we have to earn love, to earn peace, earn worthiness. We feel alone, unsupported, and stuck in survival mode. But underneath all of that, there is a deeper truth. You were never meant to live in fear. You were never meant to abandon your knowing. And you're never meant to forget your divinity. Anxiety is a symptom. Disconnection is the root. Reconnection is the healing. When you remember who you are, when you reconnect with your soul, your source, your divine essence, something inside begins to shift. The fear softens, the body calms, the heart opens. This is why the inner work matters so much. This is why I just don't teach tools for stress relief, which could be the simplest thing. I could just teach everyone tools, but it's not going to guide you back to yourself. It's not going to guide you back home. Because the soul isn't lost. It's just wanting to be heard. And so I leave you with this reflection. What version of God or the soul were you taught? And what does your soul actually know to be true? Have you ever felt the tension between inherited beliefs and your own inner knowing? And have you ever felt like anxiety is more than just overwhelm, but a message from within? If so, you're not crazy, you're not broken, you're awakening. So this podcast and the work I do isn't about fixing you. It's about reminding you of what you've always known. We're not here to perform, you're here to remember. And you don't need permission to do that anymore. And so next week, we're going to go more into meditation. I believe I'm going to be switching back and forth between a little bit of this, anxiety, and then the tools that I use and really showing how they affect us in the way that they do. And so meditation is amazing, and it's not just a tool for stress relief, but as a really powerful portal for reconnecting you with your soul. We'll explore meditation, what it is, what it isn't, different styles, and why stillness is often the very thing we avoid. But it's the exact thing that we need. So until then, I invite you to slow down, place your hand on your heart, and gently whisper, I am not lost. I am remembering. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. If this episode really spoke to you, I'd love to hear from you. Or share it with someone who needs the reminder that they're not alone in their awakening. You are so deeply loved, and the soul in me honors the soul in you. Until next time.